Welcome into another exciting edition of Hornet Nation Unfiltered. Travis Jerome alongside with you again. As always, this week we're joined by a special guest, the latest inductee into the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, Coach Woody McCorvey. Coach, appreciate you joining us today, and we look forward to hearing your story as we go on.
Glad to be a part of this podcast, Travis, and really thankful that you all asked me to be a part of it.
Well, Coach, when you go back and you look at the history of Alabama State, it makes sense to get you on this thing. We probably should have had you on a little earlier, probably before you got inducted, so we could talk about how you felt about getting selected. But we'll talk about the Hall of Fame in a second. But quarterback at Alabama State from 1968 to 1971. Just talk about your experience in Montgomery on campus and then as the quarterback of the Hornets.
Well, Travis, it even goes back before then. Growing up there in Atmore, my dad went to school at Alabama State, so we spent a lot of time Thanksgiving at the Turkey Day Classic there in Crampton Bowl, and then Birmingham Legion Field, going there for ball games when I was in high school and all. So, it was kind of embedded in me to be a part of the Hornets. And Jim Parker that recruited me there, he was an assistant coach at the time, and he recruited me there, and I had the opportunity to play for Coach Van Cleve first in 1968, and then he left and went up to Hampton, and Coach Hobart, one of the assistant coaches, he was the defensive coordinator. He took over there in 1969, so I played the rest of my career, 69, 70, 71, under Coach Hobart. Coach James was there at that time, and had a very good bond with a lot of good coaches during my tenure there. A lot of good players that I had the opportunity to play with, and it was an enjoyable, experience the years that I played there at Alabama State.
Let's walk through a couple of those games. I'm sure you could probably, if I ask you what was your favorite memory, favorite game, I'm sure you could probably pop one off pretty quick.
No doubt, it was the one of the Magic City Classics that we played there in Birmingham, and A&M was predicted to win that year. And this was back in 1971. They were predicted to win that year, and it was a very tight, close ball game, and hard-fought game. Defense on both sides, and we ended up winning the game. I was also the punted the ball, and they fumbled the ball on their own 3-yard line, and then a guy named Lewis Benson recovered the fumble, and we went in to score and won that game. And that's one that I would always remember. I mean, it's just a lot of games there that I was able to be a part of, but that one being my last year, my senior year, it left lasting memories on me.
Yeah, you talked at the beginning about it. It was a foregone conclusion about going to Alabama State. Talk about walking on campus as a freshman, just getting ready to go from the high school to the college.
Well, it was a little bit intimidating, coming from high school, and then all of a sudden you played, and now you're going to be a part of this team. And a lot different than it is today. I mean, we didn't report until latter part of August. And then you ended up playing around the 15th of September. That was the opening game. And you didn't play but 10 games at that time. But being there, being in the dorm, first time away from home, being around some of those guys, I mean, all of a sudden, you used to the type of lineman that you played with in high school and played against, and then all of a sudden you walking up and down the hallway with all these guys, 250, 260 pounds at that time. It was kind of intimidating, but it was good to get on the field early on. And Coach Van Cleve was a very no-nonsense guy, didn't say a whole lot. And just being able to get to know him, and then Coach Hobart, he was very intimidating because football was different back then. I mean, some of the things that went on the practice field and all. But once I got into the flow of it and, really learned my teammates, had some very good teammates, and was very fortunate that I was able to play as a true freshman. And a lot of time you didn't see that today, and a lot of time you didn't see it back then. But to be able to play as a true freshman, that was a big plus.
When you go to an HBC, you get caught up in the classic games. You got the Magic City Classic, which you touched on. You got Turkey Day Classic. I got to ask, which is your favorite out of the two?
Well, probably the Magic City Classic. And I was able to coach on the other side at A&M. and then play on the other side at Alabama State. So I was involved in a lot more of those as a participant than I was the Tuskegee game and the Thanksgiving Classic. On the other end, we weren't very fortunate a lot of times in the Turkey Day Classic. Tuskegee had some very good football teams at that time, and was one of the better programs in the country. And but I had a lot more success, in the Magic City Classic.
Well, let's talk about the Magic City Classic, since you brought up already about being on both sides and getting the opportunity on both sides. So you got to play. We talked about that, your favorite moment. It didn't take you long after you got done playing, 8 years, and you're already coaching on the other side of the sideline. How weird was that for you?
Well, never knew that would happen. Started out coaching high school football down in Pensacola. And then eventually got into college ball up at North Carolina Central. Jennifer Williams is there now. She spent some time, there at Central, and then only 1 year, and then ended up going to Huntsville, being there at A&M. And John Stallworth was one of the players there at A&M at the time when I was playing, and being there and having the opportunity to not only play against John, but to be around him, in all season and all. But some very good games. Ray Green was the head coach there at A&M at the time that I followed from North Carolina Central down to Huntsville. And John Chavis, good friend of mine, that eventually ended up, he and I served on the same staff together, not only there at A&M, but up at Tennessee also. And but formed a lot of good bonds and relationships there, but a lot of emotion, when you played in that game, and then you was playing against your alma mater, but you had to take a lot of that out of it, once the preparation started that week and during the ball game.
So, I think down here now what we're going to do is our claim to fame with the coaching staff and the players. We're going to have you on there and then talk about John Chavis a little bit. We claim that now he started his defensive coordinator started down here at Alabama State on the defensive side of the ball. Talk about just being able to watch him mature and grow since you coached with him.
John and I still today, we're very close. And when he came to A&M, we bonded together very well, shared the same office. And then, when I left and came up here to Clemson the first time, John was still there. He came up here and visited with us often. And then he stayed there. And Jim Parker ended up coming back to Alabama State as the head coach. And then Ray Green ended up leaving A&M, coming down to Alabama State. And John came too. And John was the defense coordinator there. And then when Ray left to go over to Jackson State, John knew the offense probably better than anybody there, and Coach Parker wanted to keep the same offense, and John moved over. He was the offensive coordinator there at Alabama State before he left and went back to A&M. But John's a very good football coach. He and I, a lot of time in the off season, we would get in a car. And 1 year we went to Vanderbilt. We left there and went to Louisville. We left Louisville, went to Cincinnati back to Kentucky, Tennessee, and then back home, studying football. And the next year we went on a little caravan, he and I. We went down to Auburn, to Florida State, to Southern Miss, to Alabama, and then back to Huntsville. And, I'm really proud of what he's been able to do with his career. Very good man, very good person, very good football coach.
Well, I think a lot of people can say the same thing about you, being proud of what you've done on the football field as a player and a coach. And let's talk about some of that coaching outside of the HBCU world. You leave A&M and you make the jump to the ACC, to a little place in South Carolina that, is now all over the map and all over the country, to Clemson to start out as an assistant from 83 to 89. You had some heck of players that you coached at the positions that you did then, and got to work under some really good coaches at that time.
Yes, I was very fortunate that got a chance to meet a lot of people, and Coach Ford gave me the opportunity to come here in 83 to be a part of his staff. I stayed here a total of 7 years, and like you said, was around a lot of good football coaches at that time, and a lot of good players that I had opportunity to coach. Several of those guys went on and was able to play in the NFL. And coming back here for this second stint, being a part of Dabo's staff, it was really good because I had a chance to be around a lot of those guys now. And when you see them, you know, they all got families. Most all of them have moved on and they're in their own professional careers outside of football. Some of them are still in coaching and doing very good things. But it's been a pleasure being back here. We came here in '83. My son was in the 8th grade. He was able to graduate from high school here, also graduate from college here at Clemson back in '92. And being a coach's kid, a lot of times that does not happen. But we really been blessed in terms of him being able to do that and have an opportunity to do that. And then now being back, every Saturday that we got a home ball game, he and his family are here. So we get a chance to spend a lot of time together. And it's just good to be back here, being in this environment and on this campus.
We're going to get to Alabama State in a minute, but for people that don't know, again, Travis Strom and Woody McCorvey here on Hornet Nation Unfiltered. Coach, you've spent 26 plus years at the Division I level coaching football. How does somebody stay around college football that long, and especially at the Division I level?
Well, the biggest thing is, when I got in it, and the thing that you always heard, being a black coach and you're on this level, they say you got to be a good recruiter. I never wanted to be known as that. I wanted it to be a part of it, but I never wanted to be known as that. I wanted to be a good football coach. I studied the game from the time my high school coach lived next door to us. And I started studying football early on, and the X's and the O's and why things happen, being able to predict things before they happen. And that's what I wanted to be able to do. And really, by taking that path and deciding that's the path that I wanted to go on. And the other thing is the people. And I've been able to be around some good people. I mean, if you go back to my high school coach, George Mosby, and then the guy that gave me my first job, Carl Madison, down at Pensacola Tate. And from there, with Ray Green up in North Carolina Central, being there with him at Central, and then to Alabama A&M, and then coming here, being a part of Danny Ford's staff. And then from here to Alabama with Gene Stallings, and Gene Stallings to Brad Scott at South Carolina, and then on over to Tennessee with Philip Fulmer, and then down at Mississippi State with Sylvester Croom, and then being back here with Dabo. And if you look back on it, it's a lot of good men in that group. Right. And being able to be around a lot of good men, and then they put together some good staffs. And that's very important. And family was very big to most all those guys. And the biggest thing is they gave me an opportunity. And every time someone gave me an opportunity, I tried to make the most advantage of it.
Let's talk about your first opportunity at the, not your first, your first opportunity in the SEC. School that everybody knows that, is known for coaches that stay, a while as far as a head coach. But you stayed there a while as an assistant at Alabama. 70-16-1 was your overall record. I mean, you look at the players you coached and just being able to keep that steady pace and to be blessed to be able to stay at a place that long. Talk about your time there a little bit.
Well, it was a good 8 years that I was able to spend there, and being able to be on Coach Stallings' initial staff. I developed a good relationship here with Bill Oliver. Bill was on our staff here at Clemson, and after the 89 season here when we weren't retained, Bill had an opportunity to go to Alabama with Coach Stallings, and he recommended me for the job there. I didn't even know Coach. And when I went in there and interviewed, he gave me an opportunity to come to Tuscaloosa to be a part of his staff and to be a part of that initial staff. And then, a couple years later, boom, we were able to win a national championship, beat Miami down in the Sugar Bowl. And I had other opportunities to leave there to go to pro ball and all. And he kind of elevated me, made me assistant head coach there in '93. And then later on, gave me the opportunity to be the offensive coordinator and in '96. And I'm much appreciative to him for that. And like you said, I was around a lot of good players. one of the best football players that I ever been around, David Palmer. He finished third in the Heisman that year. And at that time, I also coached the tight ends and the receivers. And then in '96, when he appointed me to be the offensive coordinator, I moved to quarterbacks, which I always wanted to have an opportunity to do. And I didn't ask him for it. I mean, he told me, you're going to be the coordinator, but you're going to move to quarterbacks. And having an opportunity to coach Freddie Kitchens there, Freddie had a good career for us, and then Freddie ended up being on the staff with us at Mississippi State. And then eventually he was the head coach of the Cleveland Browns, now with the New York Giants. But it was some very good years, around a lot of good players, very good coaches and all. And just our time there in Tuscaloosa was really special. And Coach Stallings was the main reason that we were able to do that, and then have an opportunity to coach Dabo there. I coached him for 3 seasons. And then the year that I got to be the coordinator, we hired him as a receiver coach because he earned it. He earned it. He showed us what he could do as a graduate assistant and did a very good job for us there during that time as an assistant. And look where he is now and how it's paid off. And I can't say how much that I am proud of him and the job that he's doing here for us now at Clemson as the head football coach.
And you took the words out of my mouth. I think that was the next question I was going to ask you, was getting the chance to coach Dabo back in the day when he was actually a student athlete. But we'll talk about what he's done at that program here in a minute because you've been a part of that. You leave Alabama, you go to South Carolina, but then you do the jump again. You're on the opposite sideline of a rival, and that's Tennessee. But those Tennessee teams, when you were there, were the Tennessee teams that really pushed the envelope and really pushed things in the SEC?
Well, knowing Philip Fulmer prior to myself going there for a long time, and then John Chambers was on that staff there at the time, and Dan Brooks, another good friend of mine that spent some time here with us prior to retiring. It was a good opportunity to go to Tennessee. Tennessee had just won the national championship in '98. And then I had a chance to go there right after they won it in '99. David Cutcliffe left and took the job down at Ole Miss, and Philip promoted Randy Sanders as the offensive coordinator, and left Holden on the staff. And, Philip gave me an opportunity to come there, and it was 5 really, really good years. I had a chance to coach running backs at that time, and I ended up the first year I was there, it was 9 guys that was in my room that ended up playing in the NFL, mainly Jamal Lewis and Travis Henry and Travis Stevens. And those guys were tremendous backs. It was a pleasure to go on the field every day to coach them. And it was a pleasure to be in that environment every day there at the University of Tennessee during that time.
I got to ask this question. In '99, you led the SEC in rushing at 191.3 yards a game. You don't see that much these days unless somebody's running triple option. Just talk about that, just the transition a little bit, I guess, in the running game then to now.
Back then, pretty much it was going to be a tight end, 2 receivers, and 2 backs. And everybody was going to be more of an inside zone running team, off-tackle power team, or sweep team. And we had an abundance of backs, and Philip believed in running the football, naturally being an old offensive line coach. And but we were fortunate to have good quarterbacks there at that time. Casey Clausen was one that we had. Prior to that, my first year there, T. Martin was our quarterback that won the national championship. He's back there on the staff now. And show you how things go around. T's son, Amari Rogers, is one of our wide receivers here now at Clemson. But, we were fortunate to have some really good football players. And a lot of those guys, Chad Clifton, left tackle, all-pro, Jason Whitten, tight end. We had an abundance of players. John Henderson and all on defense, Albert Hainsworth on defense. You just go on and on and on, the type of players that we had on both sides of the football. And every year we were competitive, and we ended up winning, prior to the CFP days, we ended up winning 3 New Year Day bowl games.
Coach, you moved to Mississippi State, and we'll talk about the induction in a minute, but I'll mention it here. You got inducted in the same class as the man you worked for at Mississippi State. And you talked about when you broke into college coaching that, as a black coach, you had to be a good recruiter, but you didn't want to be that guy. Well, Sylvester Croom broke down the door of the SEC when it came to black head coaches in the conference. How much did it mean for you to be on that staff with what you had gone through playing at Alabama State and coming up through the ranks?
It was historical, being a part of that initial staff that he put together. He and I had been friends a long time, and he was at Green Bay at the time. And a lot of people don't know this. I mean, they offered him the job. Initially, he turned it down. And they ended up, Larry Templeton and Dr. Lee, the president, they ended up going back up to Green Bay and talking to him again. And he decided he was going to take it. But he asked me, he said, look, if I take this job, will you go with me? And I told him I would. And I knew it was going to be tough. I knew it was going to be a tough situation and all because, Mississippi State was kind of low at that time. Then plus investigation was going on. Didn't know from a probation standpoint how many years we were going to get. But, it was historical. And I know we'll forget the first time he and I were together in Starkville. We were sitting in his office, nothing in there, just a clean office, his first day in there. And he was talking about his dad and my dad and was saying how they was looking down on us and knowing that things had changed in order for him to have an opportunity to be the head football coach there. Tough 3 years initially starting, and then the fourth year when we were able to win the 8 games and beat Central Florida in the Liberty Bowl. I mean, that was big. And then he ended up being the SEC Coach of the Year, and that was very monumental. Not only him being the first black coach in the SEC, but him having the opportunity to be SEC Coach of the Year. And that was very instrumental.
Travis Stroman, Woody McCorvey here on Hornet Nation Unfiltered. Coach, when you go back and look at the time at Mississippi State, you win 8 games, he gets SEC Coach of the Year, you start turning that program around. But when you go back and look, you got wins over Auburn, Alabama, and Ole Miss. Back in the early 2000s, that didn't happen at Mississippi State. You didn't beat those 3 schools, especially so you're on the sideline again coaching against the school that you were previously at. But how much did that mean to the program? How much did that mean to him as a head coach and to you and as assistant coach to be able to say, hey, we've turned the corner?
Oh, that was very big. Never will forget the first win we had against Alabama there in Tuscaloosa. Mike Hennick, who's a Montgomery guy, he's still there right now. Every time I go through, I always stop and spend some time with Mike and his dad. But Mike was the quarterback that day. And for us to be able to win that game and just to ride from Tuscaloosa back to Starkville. And that was something that we really had worked hard for and knew it was going to take some time to get it going. And then all of a sudden the next year, we had the opportunity to beat Auburn at Auburn. Mm-hmm. And, we lost Mike in that game, and then we ended up having to play Wes Carroll. That was a true freshman quarterback, and we was able to go on and be able to win that game, and then that propelled us the rest of the season. And then the second win we had against Alabama there in Starkville, I never will forget that. Never will forget it. Alabama was going in to score, and then we ended up picking off John Parker Wilson in the end zone, and Anthony Johnson ran that thing all the way back, and the whole game just flipped. And we were able to go on to continue to win that ball game. But, it was unfortunate that the next year, things didn't work out well. And then we were let go. But that was some good times, being able to spin around those guys in Starkville, even though the wins and losses. But we put that program back on the path where it's had a chance to be successful now. And those are some very big wins and some of the biggest wins in my career, looking back on it, because, people didn't think you could win those kind of games, and we did.
Well, you talk about getting a program and righting the ship. You're sitting in a stadium now that the program has been righted and that ship has been righted, and it's by one of your former student athletes and position players, Dabo Sweeney. Talk about just you being able to be there and see that. You've seen it at Alabama. You've seen it at Tennessee. You've seen it at Mississippi State. Now you're seeing it at Clemson. Talk about what he's done at that program and just for you what it means to be associated with that program.
It's so pleasing to me every day to be a part of his staff. I came over here at the end of 2008 when he was preparing his team to go down to play against Nebraska in the Gator Bowl. And, in the 2009 first full season, just to see him, how he has matured in this job, how much he has grown, to be able to sit right in all the staff meetings, to be around him on the practice field. And, Dabo's an optimist. He's an optimist. He's the ultimate optimist. And when he first got this job and I came back over here and I would be around a lot of people that I was around before, they said, we don't believe he can do what he says he's going to do. And I said, well, we'll see. We'll see. And 2009, 2010, was tough years, kind of up and down, and really wasn't a lot of consistency that he wanted in his program, but he kept building. He kept building and recruited the right kind of guys. And then all of a sudden, 2011, we win the ACC. And we lost a game up in Charlotte against the South Florida in the Belk Bowl. And, a lot of people were still doubting him. And he said, hey, the best is yet to come. The best is yet to come. And that is what has happened. And since that time, we've been able to recruit some very good players in this program. He's put together a tremendous staff around him. And just to see his attitude and his optimism, not only here in this town, on this campus, but in this region, in this state, and now the nation. This is a program that everybody knows who Clemson is and where Clemson is and what it stands for. And one of the biggest things that I'm really pleased, he's big on academics. He's very big on academics and the character of his players and the team. And one of the things that he takes a lot of pride in, he got a wall over there with all his graduates. And, when we bring families in here, when somebody bring up the question, we want to know, are we graduating our players? The only thing we got to do is take them out there and show them. And when you got guys like Deshaun Watson, all those guys that's been through here, Isaiah Simmons and a lot of these top draft picks, all those guys left here with their degrees. It's not just talk, it's about doing. And that's what we've been able to do. And that's what he's been able to do.
When you go back and you start looking at things that started happening for you in 2010, you get inducted into the Atmore Hall of Fame, Atmore, Alabama Hall of Fame, which is your hometown. And then you go 2013, you start getting the Rose Bowl Advisory Committee. You get on that in 15, the AFC Outstanding Achievement Award, the College Football Playoff Advisory Committee in 14 and 15. And you go back to the Rose Bowl Committee in 17. Before we even talk about the high school, the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, I'm willing to bet out of all of that, the one in 2010 is the one that holds a special place in your heart because it's your hometown.
No doubt. Just growing up there in Atmore, and when I grew up there, man, it was different. It was different. I mean, it's not like it is today. Mm-hmm. We were north of the tracks, and I was over the Scranton County Training School, and we would go south of the tracks to buy grocery, go over to the doctor's office, something like that. But we had our own little community over there. And my dad was my principal. And he took a lot of pride. I mean, we might not have had a lot of things, but what we had, it was a lot of pride in it. And my coaches were the same way. And, and I grew up in a home where when I went home every day, my mom was there. I had a brother and a sister at that time. I had a younger sister that came along later. And, we all spent a lot of time at Alabama State, special times and that kind of thing. But being there in Atmore, being around some of the people that I was around and growing up, the teachers that we had and the support that we had there in that community, I mean, that was very special to me. And it had a lot to do with my nurturing and growing. And, I watched how ministers, how well they did in the community, the teachers that we had, the coaches that I was able to be around. I mean, these guys, they went off and they studied the game. They went to clinics just like we do today. And that's why we had a lot of success that we had from a football standpoint and even basketball. We had some very good basketball teams at that time. And Don McNeil was from Atmore. I was a lot older than Don, but I played with Don brothers. But we had a lot of guys after that time, Don and Lou Eichner, that left Atmore and went on to University of Alabama and played and had some very good careers and a lot of success. So being able to be inducted there in the Atmore Hall of Fame, that was big. And right now, and still as of today, my daddy and I are the only father-son inductees in the Atmore, Alabama Hall of Fame, and that was very special when that happened.
Coach, I'm sure you've heard the old saying that, fame is built on the shoulders of legends, or people have always paved the way for others to be successful. What does it mean, before we talk about your induction here this last month, what does it mean to you to sit back and reflect on what you and your fellow teammates did at Alabama State, to see where Alabama State has come today with their facilities, with the on-campus stadium and things they're able to do?
I mean, when I drive through Montgomery now and headed down to Atmore to visit my mom and all, to be able to see that stadium, see what they did there at the Acadome, back when they built it. I remember John Knight called Joe Whitt and James Daniels and myself, and Reggie Barlow was there, and they had this vision, he and President Harris, on what they wanted to do with the stadium and the football office, and they included us in that, and I'm really happy that they saw fit to ask some of the old guys to come back to be a part of that, and then with Joe Whitt there now being a part of the Board of Trustees, very rewarding to me to see guys like that be included. But, you cannot take away all the years and the hard work that's been put in there. And a lot of guys that came along with me weren't able to play in a facility like that, but to be able to come back now and knowing that the young men are coming through that program and that we had something to do with it, help establish the background and the foundation. And we had some very good football players there. I mean, Charles Mitchell before me, he ended up playing in the blue-gray game. And then Lester Sims that played with me, he played in the Senior Bowl. So, when a lot of those guys come back there now, Lord Ivy and a bunch of them, it's very good and rewarding that they have an opportunity to walk through and see a place like that and be in place like it is now.
Well, Coach, you got another big honor this past month. You were selected earlier in December, I believe it was, of 19. You were selected for the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame. Then you were inducted. It had to be a virtual induction because of everything going on. But at the same time, that goes back to what we were just talking about, your time spent at Alabama State as a quarterback, going through and doing those things, your time spent as a coach at Alabama. Just, your path has just been one of those remarkable paths that when people go back and look and they say, okay, who's one of the most well-known coaches in college football? Who's one of the most well-known alumni that come from Alabama State? Your name's going to be near the top of the list, if not at the top of the list. Just talk about what that means to you and to go in with Coach Croom.
Well, it was very special. But the biggest thing, you got to have a lot of support. And that support came from, number one, my wife, Ann. She's from Montgomery. We met at Alabama State. And she's been on this journey with me the entire time, from the first day that I coached until now. And, she's been very supportive. And same thing with my son. I was fortunate enough when he was playing at the high school here in Clemson that Danny Ford gave us an opportunity, to be able to go out and watch him play. And, I might be here and then they would fly me and another guy here named Tom Harper up to wherever we were playing, so we could watch them play. And so that's big. I mean, without the support of my wife Ann and my son Marlon, that would have been tough, because coaching is a tough life. And and being able to be a part of the Alabama Sports Hall of Fame, that foundation mainly has been in coaching, because I was just a good football player at Alabama State, and the thing I always said that I wanted to do was do what my coaches asked me to do. I mean, it wasn't anything fantastic and all that. I just did my job, but this honor mainly came because of the job that I've been able to do coaching, and that goes back to the players and the players that I had a chance to be around. But sometimes I have to pinch myself, because growing up, my heroes was Willie Mays, Hank Aaron at that time, because if you look at most of the black players, if they had a chance to go on and move and play professionally, it was in baseball, because there wasn't a lot of them in the NFL at that time, and wasn't a lot of them in the NBA. But to know that you are in a hall like that, and the names, Bear Bryant, Suge Jordan, Ozzie Smith, Joe Louis, Hank Aaron, Willie Mays, Willie McCorvey, and all. I mean, it's just amazing. And then to know that you also in there with guys that you've been around, Coach Stallings, Bill Oliver, Dabo Sweeney, Danny Ford. I mean, that's very, very, that's an honor. And that's something that probably one of the biggest honors that I would ever have a chance to be a part of.
Coach, last question. When you go back and you look, and for somebody to say, Coach McCorvey, this is what I remember, what's the one thing you want people to be able to say about you? And what's the one thing, I don't like to use the word legacy a lot, but what's the one thing that you want your name and your legacy to be when somebody brings your name up?
First of all, a good man, a good teacher. That's one thing that every student that I work with, and I work with some in high school that didn't coach them. But when I taught them, I wanted to leave a legacy on them that just because they weren't a good player and an athlete, that I taught them something. And the other thing is that I'm an honorable person. Whatever I tell you, I want to back it up. That's what I've always wanted to be able to do. When I went in the homes to recruit, whatever I told that player, whatever I told his mom, whatever I told his dad, I didn't want them to have to come back to me and say, you did not do what you said you were going to do. And by that standpoint, I was going to make sure the university that I was working for, they were going to be able to carry out that promise that we made those young men. And because that's what it's all about, and everywhere I've been, I tried to provide good leadership, and that's what we need today. Man, we need leadership in this country, and to be able to get through this pandemic and everything that we're going through right now. And we put a lot of guys out in this program here at Clemson, and that's one of the things that I've been able to watch. Some of the things that I taught Dabo, I see him teaching some of those same principles right now to these young men in this program.
Well, Coach, we appreciate you taking time out of your day to spend with us and to be able to tell your story to the folks from Alabama State who may not know that you play quarterback at Alabama State. But, honestly, I will tell you this from the bottom of my heart. This has probably been, and I hate to say this to the rest of them, the best podcast and best interview we've done since we started this thing. So, again, I thank you for taking time out of your day to share it with us.
Thank you, Travis. And Alabama State is always, and will always be in my heart. And thank you for the job that you do. Thank you to Jennifer for the job that she does there in the athletic department.
Coach, we appreciate it. That's Woody McCorvey, former Alabama State quarterback, now on the staff at Clemson. Alabama Sports Hall of Fame inductee. If you want to read more about him, visit ClemsonTigers.com. His bio is on there. There's so much more to talk about that you can read. But again, Woody McCorvey here on Hornet Nation Unfiltered. This is Travis Strom saying until next week, we'll see you then.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Hornet Nation Unfiltered. We'll be back next week with another special guest from Alabama State's past. Until next time.